Over 10 years ago, when I first came on board the Unforgettables Foundation, we had terrible rainstorms in the Inland Empire. And that was a year after terrible fires had hit all the hills surrounding the area. And so there was no vegetation to hold the rain and the mud. A Hispanic family parked at a KOA campground in San Bernardino County, and down the canyon, a roaring wave of mud over 4 feet high hit that family. The father and the wife managed to save one of their kids, and 3 of the children got swept away downstream. 2 of them they found buried and dead. They did not find the 3rd child for close to 6 months, about a half a mile away, as they were cleaning the mud and debris. And I love my son and daughter so much, and my 4 grandchildren so much, and I wondered, what if that was me? What a terrible, terrible thing to happen. And I really got what the Unforgettables means and does. To protect the integrity and sanctity of the child that we've lost, but we will not forget. We were to have Congressman Raul Ruiz here from the Low Desert. However, he is the brand new father of twins. So paternity leave is alive and well, and he sends his greetings. He is an ER doctor who grew up in the Coachella Valley, and he expresses his admiration for the work of the Unforgettables Foundation and his personal concern for the horrors of child abuse. And he's home loving his children right this second. I have a friend I'm about to introduce. She's an extraordinary dance teacher, and with her partner, she has a company called Room to Dance, which is dancing for adults. All forms of dance, spectacular, performs at all kinds of civic events in Riverside. They put on performances in a beautiful studio on the mall, Main Street Mall, very close to the Mission Inn in Riverside. I had a chance to visit with her before they took over that piece of property, and to see her vision for what they were doing, and it's miraculous. And as she does her marketing and sends out her weekly emails, I'm able to see her and her partner, Julie, talking to us about new upcoming events and the kinds of things that are going on in the studio. And then one time, I happened to read a new addition to her website in which she started to tell her story. And I saw a whole new person. I saw and read about someone who has been there, done that, and has the strength to share it with everyone. And I was astounded. And the eloquence with which she told her story said to me, this needs to be published. So we talked about that. We're seeing what we could do there. But going one step further, many of her clients and friends read it as well and said, you were writing about me. One of the finest professionals, one of the finest young women I've met in many decades. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, April MacLean.
Like if I just had Stan at my door every morning, just, good morning, what do you think of me today? Every day would be a lovely day. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to try to keep on time, so I'm going to set a timer sneakily behind this podium, and start just by giving you a little introduction of who I am and what I'm doing. He gave away my best secrets. I own a dance studio in downtown Riverside. I came to Riverside about 20 years ago, And I came because of being taken into the foster care system. So I was born to a single mother who remarried when I was about 8 years old, and she married a man who unfortunately had struggled all his life and had also been a victim himself of pedophilia. So the next 6 years of my life were a exercise in understanding how to navigate my life, my pathways, what doors I came in and out of my house, what rooms I entered and when, so that I could, as much as possible, avoid the abuse from my stepfather that would go on a daily basis. And it just became sort of this game of, if you guys remember back in the days, back in the first computer days, there was a game called Minesweeper, where you would just randomly select, and to me it was completely irrational, but you would click and your game would be over and you're done. And that's sort of what childhood was like for me. It's just go and hope that you can get from here to the shower without being accosted, or that you could come home and not have to be faced with seeing things that no child should ever have to see. And I lived this way for about 6 years before I was taken out of my home. And the day that I was taken out of my home, my family was brought in, my mother and my stepfather, and at this point, I should say that my mother knew about the abuse. She was told directly by her husband. So there was nobody could be in denial, nobody could sweep it under the rug. It was happening as much as the family wanted to act like it wasn't happening. So the police did bring them in at the point that I was taken out of my home and gave my mom a choice. So we're talking about the Paris police station, Paris, California, and it was in a bungalow. The police station, it was like one of those old portables that classrooms were in sometimes. So the walls were very, very thin, and they were brought into a room right next to me, so I could hear everything that was going on next door. And I heard them sit my mom and my stepfather and my 3-year-old brother down, and I heard the police officer say, "We brought you in today because your daughter has made some very serious allegations. She is claiming that your husband has been sexually abusing her." And in the very next moment, I experienced what was a lifetime of emotion and future romanticisms playing out about how right now, because my mom knew and because she would have to say, yes, that's true, that he was going to go to jail. And as much as I felt bad for him, I was going to go home with my mom and get my mom back and my life back. And so finally, the last 6 years of feeling like I didn't belong to anyone or anything, being the kid who didn't understand her peers because why are they playing with Barbies? Why aren't they thinking about sex right now? Like, why are boys chasing them around the playground like that? Like, aren't they scared of those boys? Or all of these things that I had thought that had made me feel like such an alien were finally going to start dissipate because I was going to go home and be a normal kid again. And the very next sentence out of my mother's mouth was, "You know, she's always been a pathological liar, but this is new depths." And that was the defining moment for the next, I would say, 15 years of life, is that coming from your own mother, who's the one person who's supposed to protect you more than anyone, who's the person who raises you and says, if anybody, ever harms you, you come to me. You come to me and I will protect you. There's parents in this room right now, you've all had this talk with your kids. Don't let anybody touch you. Don't let anybody make you uncomfortable. You come to me. My mom was no exception. She told me the same thing. But when I came to her, I got sent to foster care. And foster care is what led me to Riverside. So I spent the next 3 years moving through over 22 homes. I don't know why. That's one of the hardest parts about being in a situation such as ours is you don't get told why what's happening to you is happening to you. Could I have been the most horrific teenager ever? Sure, maybe I was. I don't think I was. I didn't even touch a drug. I didn't even party. I didn't even get crazy, which a lot of normal teenagers do. But maybe I was just really crappy to be around. That's entirely possible. But nobody ever stopped and said, this is what you're doing. It's making things difficult. Instead, it was, good morning, pack your bag, you're leaving today. And sometimes that would be several days in a row. Sometimes it would be a few weeks. At the most, I stayed someplace for 2 months. And that's the longest I was ever able to establish any sort of familial contact. Okay. Fast forward. At 17 years old, I gave birth to my daughter. I found myself pregnant at 15. Actually, I was 16 when I gave birth to her. So 15 years old, in a system with no rules and no guidance and no nurturing, I found validation in the place where a lot of girls in my situation find validation, and that's in bed with a guy who will pay attention to me and make me feel like I'm worth something for the day. So at 15 years old, I got pregnant with my daughter, and as I was close to giving birth, I got a call from my social worker who said, you have basically two choices in front of you. We can't find a foster home who's willing to take a teenage girl and a baby. So we're either going to take your daughter and send her into another home, or you guys need to go back to where you started from. And in the end, we decided, I don't know who we is, this is her speaking to me, it would be better off if you go home instead of splitting you up into foster care. So they sent me and my daughter to go back into the home with my stepfather and mother, stating that he had finished his court-ordered rehabilitation. Therefore, it was a safe place for us to go into. At that point, I had someone else to protect. So I immediately petitioned for emancipation and did everything I could to prove that I was a responsible young girl. I talked the talk, I walked the walk, I took care of my baby girl, I got a job, I got a car, and even though I was presenting this facade of total responsibility, inside I was still a very, very broken and confused and unworthy child. But they granted my emancipation, and at that point in time, there was not a lot of transitional services in place. So right now, I don't know how many people are familiar with the foster care system, but as you age out, you're provided with insurance, transitional living, etc. There was none of that. So it was just one day the judge said yes, and me and Rachel were free. Except we weren't, because I had no place to live. But I could get her away from my stepfather. So that was the compromise that I was willing to make, and we spent that first week in my car. We used to drive up into the safest neighborhood that I could find in Riverside. She would fall asleep in her car seat, none the wiser, and I would stay up and stare out the window and wonder what the heck I was doing with my life. Because I only have 20 minutes, we probably shouldn't get into all of the ways that that played itself out. I did start to crawl out of that spot, and it happened very slowly. I found a job making $7 an hour as a telemarketer, and that helped me to pay for a motel room, so then we got shelter. And then I picked up more hours, and then I got a little one-bedroom apartment that was in this very undesirable neighborhood, and I would have to make my $450 rent payment in payments. Like the landlord would let me pay a little bit each week, so that I was a mess. I was a mess, but I was safe. Eventually, a coworker encouraged me to attend college. College is something that in my mind I had always reserved for the normal kids. The kids whose parents loved them, the kids whose parents wanted them, not for me. I didn't even have the intelligence level to consider going to college. And so it just wasn't a thought to me. She was very insistent and very encouraging, and eventually I found myself taking a class or two at RCC, Riverside Community College, just to kind of feel it out. And then I decided to go full throttle, like 0 to 100. I'm gonna go to law school. That's what I'm gonna do. I never went to law school, just don't, you know. But I had to fulfill a PE requirement to get my associate's degree. So I stepped into a beginning jazz class. And that was the turning point for my life leading up to the very moment I stand in front of you. Because I almost flunked out of college because I wouldn't leave the studio. It's like I stopped taking academic classes and all I wanted to do was dance. And I did eventually get my dance degree from University of California, Riverside. But dance saved my life. It gave me an outlet that required no risk and no words. It can't reject you, it can't tell you you're wrong. All it can be is what you want it to be in that moment. You get to express yourself, and you get this thing that you get to pour yourself into, which forces you to forget everything else, because you literally can't choreograph or move your body like that and use all of these faculties and simultaneously entertain thoughts of your family life, of your outside life. So I do consider dance to be the most life-changing thing that I've ever experienced, and it's what led me to open the studio. So Stan, who's also on our board and is one of our favorite people in the whole world, he was privy to this story. Before we opened our doors, Julie, my business partner, and I had said, we want this studio to be our sneaky little ministry. That people come in here and they think they're taking a ballet, hip hop, Zumba, whatever class, but really they're getting therapy. And it's absolutely true, because you can't go into a studio without receiving therapy, because, think about it, you're standing in front of a mirror, you're confronting yourself for like an hour and a half straight and watching, and for some people that's terrifying. I know that some of you would rather pluck your eye out than take a dance class, but it really does force you to start to align yourself and make peace with who you have to look at your body. You have to move it around in front of other people, for better or for worse. And so we see every week these women coming in, nervous and anxious and holding all this tension, and then we see them leave an hour and a half later, and they're sweaty, and their eyes are lit up, and their heads are held a little bit higher because they accomplished something that they didn't think they were going to accomplish. And so you can walk by and say, oh, cute, a dance studio. But behind those doors, there's some really powerful things going on. In fact, we have a woman who has been in my office every day this week, because this is the 4-year anniversary of her baby who died when he was 37 days old. And every year, she slips into this dark place because she doesn't know how to express what she's feeling. Until this year, she has been in 3 to 4 dance classes every single night for the last 7 days, pouring herself in. She brought a cake on her baby's birthday. She brought it into the dance class. We cut it up. We sang happy birthday to Max. We ate cake, and we danced. It was a powerful moment. And I'll make it all emotional, so let's talk about something else. So, through the dance studio, as Stan had spoken of earlier, we sent out these emails, and I slowly started releasing my story. So I wrote a book, and I send a chapter out each Monday, and try not to put too much stock into it because it already is horrific to me. But I started having people either respond through email or coming into my office and saying, I would have never known. You just seem like you have it all together. I would have never known that you went through that. And that was such a funny statement to me, because I know my messes. Having it all together is definitely not the way I would describe myself in any way, shape, or form. But there was something that was tugging at me. Every time someone came to me, I felt it a little bit more like, wow, people are really hungry for transparency. People are very hungry for truth, because we do live in a culture that idealizes, life is hard, but it's a journey, and I'm learning, and like, just stop. It's really, sometimes life just sucks so bad. And if we all walk around like, kumbaya, then nobody's actually being real and getting to the heart of what's going on. Like, sometimes life is, I'm not learning, I'm not learning, this is not cool. I cried today for like 2 hours. I was devastated. And there was no lesson to be learned. It was a crappy day, you know? So I started a podcast. I have a website called The Messy Warrior, and every week we release a story where I interview women who have overcome everything from, this woman was on my podcast that I just spoke of, the death of a child, to we've had human trafficking survivors, we've had domestic violence, we've had Renee Bondi, who is really famous for her stories. She fell out of bed. She had a bad dream and fell out of bed and snapped her neck and became a quadriplegic in the blink of an eye. And what it meant to like rebuild her life out of that. And we had, I think it was about 16, 17 years ago. Do you guys remember Samantha Runyon? She's all over the news. Yeah. So she was a 5-year-old little girl who got kidnapped and sexually assaulted and murdered. And we had her mom on a few weeks ago. And it's just basically these women who are willing to step forward and say, this thing happened to me, and I chose not to be a victim for the rest of my life. Okay, so it's a really important component. I chose to keep going, but I don't have it all together. Those two things have to be present in every episode, or it's all for nothing, because nobody's got it all together. That's where my journey has led me, and I think the way that I would bring that home and make it relatable to the conference today is to say that the question that I get all the time is, why are you okay? with all that you've been through, why are you okay? Especially when you look at the statistic, I think it's like 7 out of 10 foster kids end up incarcerated, dead, or homeless. That's the 7 out of 10 of us. So why are you okay? And I think that people want me to reveal like a Yoda moment, you know? Or I think that they want an aha moment, or coming to Jesus moment. But I don't have one. I mean, I love Jesus, but there was no epiphany in my life that made me okay. What it was a tiny little seed planted 1,000 times by 1,000 different people, most of which never saw it get into fruition at all. Most of which poured into me at a time where I could not care less about what they had to say. I didn't care about their guidance, their wisdom, making the right choice. I didn't care about any of that. All I could feel was my own hurt, and I had no idea how to process it. So it manifested itself in anger, in self-destruction, in self-loathing, in all types of ways. And I am so sure that there were so many people along the way who walked away from me like, lost cause. Or, why do I keep talking to this girl? She's just going to turn around and make choices like that. But they do not know that those seeds were then watered by other people, and watered by other people, and watered again. And now they're blossoming. And they're still very tiny, because I'm still sort of a messy little thing. But if those seeds had not been planted, then I would have ended up like one of those 7 out of 10 people. So in the profession that you're in, you see a lot of heartache. And you're gonna I have no doubt, a lot of times where it seems pointless, where people's ears are shut. But my story should be a testimony to the fact that it's never shut. Sometimes you just don't get to see the fruits of your labor, but that doesn't mean that you don't pour into it. So, thanks. I had a golf clap up here. I always try to leave like 2 minutes for any sort of Q&A. I mean, I don't expect that there's like massive questions going on here, but I also have to run out and pick up my own baby from school, so since I don't get to hang out with you guys, does anybody have any questions? No. Yes?
Do you still, I'm not sure if you still speak to your mother?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, she stayed with my stepfather for a very long time. They got divorced not too long ago, actually. And I have attempted a relationship with her. We'll text each other once in a while, but the boundaries that I set up are generally overrun almost instantly when I try to engage in that. So I have to try to maintain like a healthy distance.
So how do you deal with day in and day out?
With her in particular?
The anger towards her. How do you deal with day to day the anger and all those feelings you have?
There are 2 things that I think about really often when I think about her. Both are from books, because I'm sort of a bibliophile. The first is, I read this book, and it's not even a deep book, but it kind of is. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'm sure a lot of you have read it. It's like the manifesto of relating to others. But there's this section where he talks about the quickest way to shut down an argument with someone is to say to them, I understand I would do the exact same thing if I were you. And the reason it's so accurate is because it's true 100% of the time. If I was my mom, I would have done the exact same thing as her, because she is her, and that's what she did. And so I think a lot about, she did what she knows. People do what they know. And so if she made that choice, that's all she knew. And I can't do anything about that. Yes, it breaks my heart, but that is who she is. And I can't fix that. All I can do is do better by my babies. The other thing that I heard recently, which is also a super old book by Napoleon Hill called Outwitting the Devil. In this book, he interviews the devil. And the devil says, I control, sorry guys, I know this is like super deep, weird thing to say, but I really enjoyed this portion. The devil says, I control 98 out of 100 people, because you can only live your life in 2 ways, out of fear or out of faith. There is no middle ground. So if you're not living out of faith, you're living out of fear, and now I have you. And I can't let anybody have me that way. Not my mom, not anyone else. And that's where I would be living if I spent, time is up, if I spent all my life hurting over what she did to me. Yeah.
in the seeds that were planted in your life that are now showing us who could you say was that person that planted that seed in you?
Oh, there was a ton of them. There was a couple of social workers. Say again? Oh, her question was the seeds that were planted, who planted them? What did that look like? So, and there was like hundreds of them. And it could be something as small as somebody next to me who took a moment to talk to me when I was 14 years old and super awkward and kind of icky and had that countenance of like, leave me alone. And they simply started a conversation and saw me, something that small, to social workers, to people who would take the time to be consistent force in my life when I was unlovable. I met a woman who was 65 years old and for reasons beyond my comprehension felt the need to befriend me. And she took me out to lunch once a month, and for 4 years, once a month we met, and we had 3 categories: personal, professional, and spiritual, and she would make me set 3 goals in every category. And then the next month, she would ask me what I did about those goals. She got nothing out of our time together. She just simply chose to pour into me. But that structure, I wouldn't be who I am today without that structure. So it was really like the persistence of people who saw more in me than I saw in myself. Take one more.
How does someone get into your dance classes?
Oh, just show up. Yeah, you just show up. It's an 18 and older studio. We have everything from fitness, we have Zumba and Pound, to hip hop and ballet and Afro Samba and West African and burlesque, and everybody there is like family. Like it's a really unhealthily addictive place to go. You should go. Thank you so much, you guys.